Well, I called that draft EU-Asia connectivity concepts, contexts, and contestations. And let me. First of all, in a generic way, I thought of referring to connectivity and EU-Asia relations in the introduction. Then the concepts and contexts of connectivity. I will come back to what I mean by that, and the connectivity and contestations, and then finally the conclusion. So, first of all, it's necessary to point out that connectivity is not a means in itself, but it's a function of cooperation and integration. And it is thus a concept that is deeply embedded in a liberal understanding of the international political economy or international relations. I think there is a need to deconstruct and to revisit the meaning of connectivity. And that is because the liberal paradigm is losing legitimacy from within. That's because of the erosion of multilateral institutions for global governance, a possible or effective leadership, a lack of leadership, and common values. That is also visible in this discourse of the end of the West. But it's also challenged from without, and that is the external shock of the coronavirus. So what then are the implications for foreign policy making on connectivity in Europe and Asia? And how and why is foreign policy reshaped by these developments? A couple of research questions come up here. Oh, wait. This is not what, yeah. So what does connectivity mean for whom in EU-Asia affairs? How to explain the new role of connectivity in and for EU-Asia relations? And whose understanding and definition of connectivity is evolving? How is foreign policy on connectivity reshaped? Which function does connectivity have in a pandemic-prone environment? And what are the limits to EU-Asia connectivity? How to redefine it? How to reconnect Europe and Asia? As I just mentioned before, we need to agree on the definitions of regions, right, or on the actors. So, are we speaking of the EU, or are we speaking of Europe and of Asia? And whom do we refer to when we speak of Asia? Is that East Asia, or is it does it also include India and Russia and Australia? So, effectively, do we speak of Europe? Do we speak of that's a mistake here. Do we speak of ASEM Europe or ASEM Asia? So do we refer to ASEM here, or are even a larger group of actors? That is something that we should decide. So in that introduction, an overview of the pre-pandemic state of EU-Asia affairs would be conducted, would be done. That is, the actors and policies and also institutions and processes would be presented, meaning probably EU-China relations, EU-Japan relations, then the relations between the EU and South Korea, but also EU-ASEAN. And in each case, specific policy areas would be analyzed: economy, trade and investments, politics and security, development, people to people, that is, and also university exchanges, tourism. And then further on, the diplomatic relations and institutional structure would be looked at. That is the bilateral one. Here, a focus on the strategic partnerships, and that is essentially China, Japan, and South Korea, or even India. I mean, that's, yeah. And then also the multilateral context. So EU, ASEAN, well, ARF, but also ASEM would be discussed. Then in the following subchapter, the concepts and contexts of connectivity would be dealt with. First of all, the definitions of and policies on connectivity would be well, discussed. That is a review of academic literature and policy and the policy documents, by then the definitions and policies of the EU, so mainly the Connecting Europe and Asia document, but also possibly by individual EU member states and also Asian countries. People's Republic, well, here China and Japan would come to my mind. Then there is ASEAN and the master plan on ASEAN connectivity. But there are also international institutions, formal, informal, like ASEM, 17+1, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, well, Belt and Road, obviously, but there is also the Eurasian Economic Union. So, which international and domestic factors shape policies on connectivity in Europe and in Asia? There is the recent global context of EU-Asia relations, that is, well, and interdependence, integration, globalization, and questions of regional, interregional, global governance, all related to the liberal paradigm. And then there is the new global context that is related to what could be called the new geopolitical turn, and especially well, with regard to Russia, but also regard to US-China relation. And then with regard to political economy, there is protectionism, there are what people call trade wars, tech wars, all related to, well, decoupling, and then there are the domestic factors. Probably that also need to be brought in here. So when it comes to connectivity and contestations, I was thinking of bringing roles in here, role theory. International roles and structural, and the structural context is the heading here. So whose connectivity? International roles are important factors, dispositive factors of international social structures. And here, specific the EU, but also possibly member states could be selected as cases. Japan and China in the case of Asia. All of them are developing their respective foreign policies on connectivity between Europe and Asia, as in the case of France, even the Indo-Pacific. And these foreign policies are enacted via what is called national role conceptions, which are a product of domestic expectations and external expectations by other countries, by other actors, so-called significant others. So there are competing ideas regarding an international role, and those competing ideas, they add complexity to the policy formulation and implementation process. And this can lead to role contestation and role conflicts that in turn have the potential to reshape foreign policies and institutions. In our case, foreign policies and institutions with regard to connectivity. Meaning that the role expectations of the EU vis-à-vis, for instance, China, and the resulting role conflicts have the potential to also reshape China's own role conception on connectivity. So there is it's a two-way process. The securitization of connectivity can be observed, and in a pandemic-prone environment, the long-term risks or effects of COVID-19 on EU-Asia should be taken into account, and some of them are a further deglobalization and even disconnectivity or decoupling with regard to supply lines, the relocation of production away from China, and this then resulting in further delegitimization of the liberal paradigm in the global and domestic contexts of policymaking. And the United States is important here as well. So this whole process is also contingent on further development of US-China relations and the threat of a new Cold War even. So the rationale, the quality, and the objectives of EU-Asia connectivity they are all increasingly contested. That means that for the EU and its member states, and also for Asian actors, there is a need to reconceptualize Europe-Asia connectivity. The costs related to vulnerabilities caused by dependencies need to be identified, need to be recalculated, and included when connections are developed, deepened, or strengthened. Policies on EU-Asia connectivity need to be based on this new understanding of connectivity. And to do that, a debate is needed, a debate on the formulation and implementation of a new EU-Asia connectivity regime. And this debate should take place in multilateral settings, and it needs to be implemented on all levels of governance. So this essentially is what I have come up with at this point, and
thank you, Sebastian.
I'm looking forward to feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. So let us have some discussion. If you have any comments or questions, please raise. Because the paper by Sebastian is a conceptualization paper, we have had some longer time than other papers. Each paper after will have only 10 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for discussion. Okay, So,
So
colleagues, do you have any questions or comments?
So no, Anna raised her hands.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sebastian, for the presentation and for the paper. I think a few things are very important for all of us, and of course, first of all, it's very good that you define the concept of connectivity, because it's a wide and broad and quite difficult concept to work with. But apart from that, I think it's very important that we kind of have a discussion, or we see also with other papers to what extent we actually include a corona perspective. Because it could be, I mean, we could see it as a complete game changer, and that it actually throws everything up in the air, and the papers need to reflect that in some way or the other, even if we can't yet see the sort of, the real life implications. So I also think that in that there are a number of things which lie slightly outside the more, strict framework of EU Asia, but still are very important. And Sebastian, mentioned a few of them. I think it's very important to look at the effect on the cooperation between the EU and Asian states of the war of narrative between China and the US, because Europe is very much caught in between. And I suspect that some of the Asian states are very much caught in between as well, like Japan and South Korea and so on. I mean, it's sort of changing everything. Here in Europe for the moment, there is a lot of discussion about China's new sort of diplomatic approach. I mean, the mass diplomacy, or the diplomacy of generosity, and how that will change relations, the kind of diplomatic interaction between states and international organizations. And I wonder if that is not also one of these things that we should reflect in our papers. And then I think it's very interesting to bring up the changing role conceptions. And of course, when, something as major as, the implications and the consequences of the corona crisis sort of changes the way in which states behave, and also the sort of the remit of international organizations, and, the rationale of them sort of, in some areas at least, leading international cooperation and diplomacy. That must be, that in some way or the other, it must be sort of reflected in changing role conceptions. And again, I think one thing that is very important for at least the Western perspective of, let's say, the liberal world order and all that, is also how the US is completely shattering the structures of international cooperation, at least, I mean, through international organizations and regime-based understanding of how to cooperate. And I suppose for many European and Asian countries, that will change the way in which they see their possibilities to act on the international scene. And that will in itself also change, the way, the way in which they conceive of their own roles. So we have, it seems to me, I mean, the corona crisis has sort of underlined, or even put in starker light, the change and the kind of dismantlement of the liberal world order, and that has severe implications for the EU, at least, and I also believe for some Asian countries.
Thank you, Anna.
Can you still see my screen? Is it still shared, actually?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so you could just, Anna, you could just have a look at the slide that I'm showing right now. I skipped it during the presentation, but you will find a couple of points that you brought up in here as well. Brexit, for instance, right? Geopolitical Commission. Yeah, thank you very much. Yes. I mean, this is actually the challenge, as so often as nearly always, is how to focus, right? I mean, how to I mean, this is, I mean, we cannot, I mean, that is something that I was also realizing. There are so many elements and factors. So, but we need to provide a framework here of analysis. So, how to decide what to leave out and what to take in. It's yeah. Especially because there is a paper on, I mean, like climate change, for instance. Yeah. So the new and old security threats and their securitization. I think which brings in pandemics as well. So the link to Corona is a conceptual one, but also a very topical one. Yeah. But we have no paper on pandemics.
No.
Yeah, it is not easy to decide how much and in which depth the coronavirus issue should be included in the papers. So Jason has just come
after his class. Oh, how are you? Everyone.
Hello. Fine, thank you.
Welcome.
So because it is an ongoing process of having this pandemic, we probably have to observe a few weeks, and then let us have another discussion of this kind, how to deal with this coronavirus pandemic.
Yeah.
But it's a really very valid intervention by Anna about the coronavirus and how to deal with that. Anybody else? Do you have any questions or comments?
So if I may,
yeah, Paul.
I would like to support the vision of Sebastian about how we define Asia, because it's also important from the trade and investment relations. So because of we don't know how exactly to understand the Asia. Is it the entity of 50 countries, or we can find some more other definitions we could use, and it will affect our results, our finding on trade and investment. So Sebastian raised here the issue of that we should probably think about how to define it, and I would like to support this approach, because yes, it will affect our research in our field in trade and investment. So another thing is this corona that is going on. It will definitely affect our trade, investment, and in our case, for example, we don't have data for analysis at the moment, and they will appear, of course, in the future. But probably when our deadline is, we won't have too much data on coronavirus. Probably will be a factor we'll try to describe and indicate in the paper, but we won't have a hard data for analysis. There are some pioneer research on that, but still probably the full data, broader data won't be available. So yes, I would like also to agree with Anna and Sebastian about the corona impact on our research. So yes, we probably should observe the situation and maybe somehow cope with it.
So as raised by Sebastian, how strongly the deglobalization, disconnectivity happen? That is really a very big question, right? In the era of pandemic, and also to see the impacts of this pandemic to world economy, world politics. So it's really a big challenge for our project as well. Sebastian, can I raise one question to you? I have one question to you, Sebastian. And the question is, when I read your proposal, you had the order of your paper is to describe first the connectivity and EU-Asia relations, and then going over to concepts and contexts. And then finally, you are dealing with the contestations.
Yeah.
Is this what is the logic of your thoughts? Why put this connectivity and EU-Asia relations in the beginning? Why this is not at the end? That is my question. So can you explain a little bit of your line of thought?
Yes. Yeah. Well, my thinking was, I mean, the first part is an introductory part, right? So I was, I took that. I was thinking of, but I see your point, right? One could also talk of EU-Asia relations. So I mean, just this, leave connectivity. Do not mention connectivity in the first. In the introduction, just talk about EU-Asia relations, which is essentially and that is what it essentially is, right? And bring in connectivity at a later point. Yes, yeah, I see that. Sure.
I mean, that's just my impression.
Yeah. No, very good. Yeah. No, this is just a yeah, good point. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's up to you. I mean, it's just my impression that the EU-Asia connectivity or EU-Asia relations could be dealt with as a kind of case of this connectivity, because in the beginning you are defining connectivity, and then you are with concepts and context, and then contestations, and then finally you could talk about the EU-Asia case. That was my just first impression, but it's up to you because you have done more than me.
Sure. But yeah, it looks sure. Yeah. I'll think about it, but it makes sense. Yeah, of course. Thank you. Yeah. Good.
So if no further questions, then we could go over to the second. Who is the second?
So Levi is supposed to be.
Levi, and then Levi cannot participate.
Could I say one final thing about the introduction paper?
Yeah, Charles?
Repeat the praise that Sebastian got. I thought it was very comprehensive and a lot of nuance. He mentioned something about the difficulty of focusing. And there, I think we have the guidance of the interaction between the introduction paper and the different articles, which provides the focus. So we can make sure that what's highlighted is the different topics of the constituent parts of the special issue. For example, you have your policy areas. I mean, I would just add like environmental and sustainability, based on our paper. The slide you showed in response to Anna's about remarks about the new security threats, you had climate change. But I think that can help provide a little focus just by reflecting on what we have on the content of the individual papers.
Yes. Yeah.
It could be later done, right? Okay. Then let's invite Chung and Yoon. About
okay. I think
just a second. I need
I need to share my screen with you. So probably someone can help us, help me. So when in terms of doing some presentation, when in case of the question dealing. So I will do the presentation today, and then we're going to talk about that. Then after Sebastian finishes the screen sharing, then I can start doing my job.
Yes, I was expecting that remark, but just let me. How
Or
do
I can straight forward that I can share this. So okay, well, let's go.
No, wait. Oh, the computer tone. How can I de-share?
You have to disconnect. So just trying to finish your connection.
Look at share screen at the bottom of your screen. You have a little green
arrow. Yeah, green icon.
Yeah, this is how. No, but oh wait. Okay, wait. How about this?
Okay, you have to click on the upward arrow next to the white. I'm so sorry, the green arrow. There is a little one. I think.
Can someone do it or not?
Maybe yes, maybe no. I'm not quite sure.
Does it work? Does it work now?
I think can you see my screen? Then I started my screen, my sharing. So can you see my screen?
Unfortunately, no.
No. What about this? Can you see? Oh yeah.
Can you still see mine?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you see Sewon's?
Okay.
No?
Well, I will try to do that. Well,
No.
So yeah, could you please go down to the very top one, the top. So please expand your option. Then there is the really red one on the side. Then you can stop your sharing. So there is.
Okay. What I will do is I will leave the meeting and come back. Okay. And then. Okay. Bye bye.
Okay. So can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
The public diplomacy.
Yes.
Okay. Public diplomacy in Europe-Asia connectivity. Okay. Well, probably. So we will wait until when Sebastian comes back to our Zoom meeting. Yeah, this is very new platform. It's not easy to do that. And for your information, my new affiliation taught me how to use the Zoom thing. So actually, I'm kind of the technological geek or something. That is kind of okay. Well, welcome, Sebastian, and nice to see you. Okay.
So each paper 10 minutes only.
Okay. Well, I will do the timekeeping purposes that I will do my timer. So before I start, okay, let's go. So thank you, Sebastian. After doing the conceptualization paper on the public diplomacy, sorry, yeah, make a full screen. Yeah. Okay, I will. Can you see the full screen now? It's much better.
No, not yet.
Yes.
Oh, yes, now.
Okay. Right, then our presentation will be on public diplomacy in Europe-Asia connectivity. So actually, this is very much the working title. And in this presentation, I'll be talking about the 5 things. The first one, I'll be introducing about the conceptualization of our paper. And second one, we're going to look at the EU's effectiveness of Europe-Asia connectivity. And then we'll look at specifically on the strategic narratives of the research medium. Then I will introduce the semantic network analysis as a research methodology and we'll briefly present.
Can you move on?
Okay.
Can you show us the next slide?
Okay, so yeah, for the starting point, the European Commission released the Europe-Asia connectivity, or the exact date is 19th of September 2018. They have the variety of agendas they should take care of. And our challenge in our perspective, the EU's effectiveness is still questionable. And I think is probably what briefly mentioned Sebastian's conceptualization on contestations, probably. And well, also in comparing with the China's or the Russia's effectiveness in the Central Asia is kind of is our big question attached to the Institute for Security Studies. And our objectives is trying to measure how the effectiveness how the EU defended its effectiveness through using their online platforms of the homepage of the European Commission, European Council, and European Parliament, and European External Action Services. So what we will focus is the strategic narratives. And strategic narratives are the means of for political actors to construct the shared meanings of past, present, and future of international politics to shape the behavior of domestic and international actors. So they extend their influence and manage expectations and change the discursive environment they operate. And these narratives about both nation states and both the system itself, both who we are and what kind of the order they want. So it's about the conceptualization of strategic narratives. For the European Union, the strategic narratives can be very useful to prove or convince the European Union's value to others. So it's actually how the European Union persuade the others by using the strategic narratives. Then our focus is trying to find out what kind of the European Union strategic narratives the EU has, and we would like to identify and describe its activeness in the international system. So through strategic narratives, the EU can manage other actors' expectation and then construct the international system. But they will, by looking at this, so we'll specifically look at these are the three major items for the strategic narratives. And you can see on the PowerPoint, there are three different types of the strategic narratives according to the Ms. Gimmons research. There's a system narrative which describes how the world is structured and who the players are, then how the system works. The example things you can find out the cases of the Cold War and war on terror narratives in 2001. And identity narratives is about the setting out what the story of a political actor is, what value it has, and how the goal it has. And policy and issue narratives is setting the political actions in a context in which an explanation of who the important actors are and what the conflict or issues is and how the particular course of action will resolve the underlying issues. So that is the research medium I was talking about. Then I will use the methodologies that newly developed in 2010. It's called the semantic network analysis. This methodology is kind of the big data analysis and the text mining. So actually, the network we consider as a text and discourses as a form of the networks that you see through. So in this graph, and the network is association between the concepts expressed in text. So there is a graphing notation for representing knowledge. So this kind of the semantic network can show the knowledge patterns of the conceptualization of the EU's public diplomacy in light of EU-Europe-Asia connectivity. So this represents the semantic relations between the concepts in the network format. So when you look at this diagram in the PowerPoint and the dot and the line concepts, and the dots that means the salient words in here, and the lines are showing the connection. And throughout these kind of the group of dots and line can show the framings within these strategic narratives. So they have the additional theoretical foundation there. The graph theories is kind of I briefly mentioned, and there was I briefly mentioned about the cognitive paradigms and framings within itself. So the data profile that I've specifically researched on the 4 major institutions homepage: European Commission, European Council, Parliament, and External Action Services. So actually, I separated between the European Commission and European External Action Services. we specifically want to look at how this number of articles on postings on Europe-Asia connectivity. We hit the keywords of connectivity on the homepage, and we tried to find, we were able to find out 90 postings, but there were not many, unfortunately. So actually, we will look at more detail. Then you can skip this. Then when you look at the data profile, then there were connectivity was released in 2018, but there are some articles that released in the year before. Then the 2019 can be the how can we say, it's kind of the teaser of the Europe-Asia connectivity. And but these connectivities from 2014 and 16 may sound a little bit irrelevant, because this connectivity is nothing to do with the Europe-Asia connectivity, but ASEAN connectivity perspective. So actually these were about the ASEAN. Then after receiving some of your comments, that I will delete, I will take off these 6 articles. Okay. So in the part of the semantic network, then we looked at the sentiment analysis, and actually how these words are frequently mentioned within the strategic narratives. So within itself, and 95% that non-categorized word that means neutral. So I have 2 minutes. So yeah, and 4% about the positive, and 1% about the negative statement. Then when you look at these ones and top 20 word mentioned, then we can focus on cooperation, sustainability, development, transport, investment, ASEAN. Then through this, we can find out the brief agenda. So I will leave this one for the further receiving further questions. When you look at the semantic network analysis, we will be able to find out some dominant framings, like a research paper towards sustainable Europe by 2030, and Europe-Asia cooperation, EU-Japan cooperation, Asia Connect project is a kind of their proper name. And also I will summarize these findings within this. So actually, what I analyzed through this result, I was able to find, me and someone were able to find out these things. And within the system narratives and structured emerged in terms of the Europe-Asia connectivity, but still unclear. And also difficult to find out some challenging changes and transformations. And also the identity narratives. There are some framings about the economic visions and council conclusion and opinions on the connectivity, but the problem is negotiation contestations are not sufficient. So I think it's probably some overlaps with the Sebastian mentioned. But most of the framings were focused on, centered on issue narratives. They just want to release some issues to draw some attention from the others. Okay, well, I think I need to briefly mention and stop. And then current situation clearly tells us the EU and Asia are the important actors within itself, but the cybersecurity is kind of the conflictual areas, but the COVID-19 will re-emerge after the data collection process. But there is no particular actions, just only introducing the issue only. So actually there is the current restrictions on the issue narratives. So it's kind of our brief, this is kind of the planning stage. So I could not we could not draw the proper directions after that. And the EU should develop Europe-Asia connectivity initiative. Then they need more systemized explanation of this initiative. And also this initiative has lack of explanation. So, and also no comparison with the other counter initiatives, such as Belt and Road Initiative of China or something. Then there's kind of explanatory deficit. And also the issues were about the meetings, but no firm actions and resolution to do the further task. then what we briefly suggest is that they need to do more firm actions to increase their impact of this initiative. Thank you for listening. So I think that we can I can stop here. Then please give us constructive comments. And if you have any questions, then free to ask. Thank you very much. I was in a hurry to speak in 10 minutes, so.
Everybody's. I have one question, and probably that's a comment. Is there any specific reason why you chose the time frame from 2014 to today?
So that's a very good question. Thank you very much. Then I hit the keys of the Europe-Asia connectivity in the homepage. Then we did not set the time frame because the articles were not sufficient. So yeah, so actually what kind of try to collect everything because in order to do the analyze, we need to have a sufficient number of postings. So actually, then unfortunately, then we need to take off the 2014 to 16 article posting. It sounds a little bit irrelevant. So actually, I would take off probably 84 at the moment. But
Well, we will see. We can actually extend the collection period if necessary.
So we didn't set from the beginning, right? So
yeah, just only for this presentation, we just wanted to share our idea of drafting this this chapter. That's why.
So if you extend it to 2010, 2005, 2000 also, there could be more kind of postings or not. I mean, before 2014, there were no mentions, no postings.
Yeah, unfortunately. So, and also we need to find out some directive for the further how can we say, post the website. They share about the EU policy initiative on the EU media level. So I think I would try the directive as additional one, that we can get some more articles. But we already did make a collection of the directive articles because, but we were kind of a bit hesitant because we're just kind of trying to put as official is official. So we don't want to mesh up at the officials and non-official thing.
Anyway, we will end up having more documents on this EU-Asia connectivity in the end. So if we extend the collection period later on, maybe we can have bigger data.
Or we can approach the Europa itself. So, but well, we need to do some more, find out the proper online posting homepage for the European Union. But
yes, we can add up that.
Yeah, we can add up. Yeah,
if necessary. Yes.
Another question is, any specific reason to separate the EAS from the Commission?
Because they operate in the two different website homepage. So
okay, but why then EAS as a separate body from the European? It's a part of the European
part of European Commission, yes.
So is it to see more specifically the activities and policy making of EAS?
Yes, we will also. Probably we can separate the semantic network between the EAS and the European Commission. So actually we can see the macro perspective and the specific focus. But in terms of their focus, they're kind of concentrating on the issue only. So they really, EAS is somehow like a public diplomacy agency. So actually what we consider the EAS can be the important agent for the public diplomacy. So that's why we separate.
And if you can see any some interesting point where different institutions can have different direction of public diplomacy, then maybe we can compare between different institutions. However, the total size of collection is not significant at the moment. That is why we just show you as it is, but we didn't compare in detail.
I mean, probably before 2014, if you did not find any significant number of postings, The reason may be that they are meaning connectivity, but they are using another word.
The alternatives you're talking about.
So
That's
probably
possible, yes.
you can use this another word to find out the real connectivity related policy initiatives. This might just
there's one thing that might be confusing because in that case, use another word, not connectivity, but maybe connection or relation, partnership, whatever. But we can't widen the range of keywords.
that's right.
So that is why, yeah, at the moment we just stick to the word connectivity for this project itself.
Yeah.
And then we have to think about it.
Yeah. That's good. Okay.
I have two comments, if I may.
Yes.
Very, very shortly, not to take up too much time, and thank you very much for an interesting presentation. So I wonder, I have two questions. I wonder what you mean with the effectiveness in this paper. I think you should define that somehow. And related to that, what I think is very important where we are today is that how do then the EU deal with the issue of being accused of not being effective, so being ineffective? I mean, there's a lot of, there are lots of strategic narratives out there that actually, I mean, in the Corona context, is extremely clear that the EU was portraited as ineffective. Its response was very ineffective. So I just wondered how you will deal with that. And then I just wonder also, how do you formulate the public diplomacy aspect of the paper?
Good point.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna, for your precious points. Then I will approach one by one. And I think I might have mistaken about the talking more in detail, the time constraints. And in here, our challenge we see is EU's effectiveness is not ineffective, but is still questionable when you compare with the other global powers. So actually, in case of the Institute for the Security Studies exemplified in the cases of Central China or the Russia's effectiveness in Central Asia region, but still EU's effectiveness is still unclear. So actually, that is what we should address. So actually, probably we need to do more explanation on the EU's effectiveness throughout the history of the literatures. But I think the EU is very effective in terms of the Afghanistan mission, but that is a very old event when you think it's 2003 or something. And also the second point, the public diplomacy, then strategic narratives is also, this research is frequently used in light of public diplomacy, but we need to do more explanation of the public diplomacy. Then we're trying to explain more in the next version of our text, and to try to explain more the connection between public diplomacy and the strategic narratives. Okay, is it enough? Okay, good.
Yeah, if I just briefly come in here, I was thinking of this in the same of these points as well. Maybe you could find some additional clarifications in academic literature, and you could briefly relate to the public diplomacy strategies, for instance, by the US or Japan or China, whoever, just to provide some context of the importance of public diplomacy, and by doing so, this question of defining the effectiveness of it might also be tackled.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to add something about the effectiveness, because to me it's also a little fuzzy still what you mean, especially the measurement thing. And therefore, I mean, you often talk about effectiveness in terms of outputs or outcomes or goal attainment. That would be one way of doing it. But for example, you mentioned like comparing China and Russia versus the EU. I think you have to really clear what your measuring stick or what your metric is if you're going to use that language. Otherwise, perhaps avoid that particular use of language. But this is something to think about.
Okay, thank you very much, As.